Hey, welcome to Honey, I Shrunk the Kitsch. Today we're going to do a miniature trash to treasure project. We're going to take these used mini paint pots that are left over from another craft project and turn them into a set of miniature Tupperware. So the first thing we need to do here is to just separate out the paint pots. I never twist them apart when I'm actually using them to hold paint because I just feel like they're more stable when they're all in a row like this. But to turn them into Tupperwares, I'm just going to use my razor to really get very close to this side to take off the little twisty connector part. And I'm going to go ahead and just keep going with my razor to take off all these other little bits and bobs that help connect the lid to the pot, or even these little tabs that you can see on the other side of the lid. I want it to be as plain as can be because when I think of Tupperware, I actually think of a Country Crock container. Yeah, growing up in the 1990s and kind of the Appalachian region of the US, we had stacks and stacks and stacks of these empty Country Crock margarine spread containers because they lasted forever. When they were done holding your butter, you would just wash them out and they could hold just about any leftover food that you could imagine. And quick side note, as I'm wiping out the inside of these dried up paint pots, I'm not too fussed about whether there's going to be stains on this plastic because Country Crock containers were not clear. They were brown. So I'm going to be painting all of these with a couple coats of spray paint in a bit. So when the holidays came around, if you were the youngest child, like me, I was the youngest in the family, it was probably going to be your job to take the Country Crock containers out of the refrigerator and figure out which one held what. Like maybe it had pimento cheese, maybe it had leftover vegetables, maybe it had the Jello salad. Like I don't know. It was a surprise for everybody. Now, I happen to have this spray paint left over from another project. It's called Satin Nutmeg, and it's the Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch collection, which I really like because it also bonds to plastic. But this is the exact color that I need. This is what it looks like after one coat. And then this is what the second coat is going to look like. But by the third coat, it should look about like this. Now, at this point, one of my kids came up, asked me what I was doing, and when I explained, she said, "Mom, our Tupperware doesn't look like that." So I gave her another set of these little leftover paint pots. These all happen not to have paint in them yet, or if they were already cleaned out, which is handy. And obviously, I was the one to help with taking the razor and neatening them up a little. But she did want to keep the lid still attached to the container and to keep the tabs because those do kind of resemble the Tupperware that we usually use. So then, when I had put all the sharp objects away, I could let my kid take back over. She wanted to paint the lids silver, so we dug into our craft paint supply. This acrylic paint, the Folk Art Multi Surface, we really like because it sticks to a lot of unconventional surfaces like plastic. And so she's just going to give this several coats and let it dry. Now, while she is painting her lids and while my spray painted containers are drying, I'm going to hop on Canva and work on making labels, Country Crock labels for my containers. So I'm going to start with a Google image search. I'm looking for the Country Crock logo that I remember from all of these containers, which in my memory, they have a great deal of detail. I'm not sure how that's going to translate on miniature scale. So I'm just copying several of the designs that I like and that I remember, and I'm downloading them. And from there, we'll fiddle around and see what we get. So once I have my images downloaded, I'm going to take the one that I like best. I'm going to try and isolate the logo the best that I can. I'm going to crop it a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of a background remover. And then I'm actually going to use my color selector to dye the rest of the background about the same color as is in the background of this Crock label. Now I'm just fiddling around with some of the other images, trying to adjust the colors to make them look as close to what I have in my head as possible. And I'm going to make some that are really detailed and some that are much more simplified. I kind of think the simplified ones are going to look better on these really tiny labels, but we won't know until we try. So then after that, I have measured my containers and I know that I need it to be these specific dimensions. I need the labels for the lid to be 1/2 inch. And thankfully, with Canva, I'm able to make a circle that it shows me easily is going to be exactly that dimension. So I'm going to make a bunch of circles so that I can make the labels for the lids. And then again, I also know that the label size I need for the body of the container should be about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch tall. So I'm going to again make a rectangle and copy those a bunch of times so I can make the labels for the body. And now comes the fun part. I'm going to try just copying and pasting in the different logos and see what I like. So I'm really liking the look of this very simple Country Crock logo with the barn. But then here on the larger label that I'm going to put around the middle of the container, I kind of want this more detailed one that says shed spread on it. But it's missing a barn. So I'm just going to real quick copy that from the more plain label, group those together, and there we go. Now, to me, the label that's going to go around the container was just looking a little bit plain. So I decided to go back in and find, like a barcode, something I could use as nutrition facts or an ingredients list. And I think that'll fill it out a little bit, just enough to make it look a touch more realistic. And speaking of realistic, one thing I'm making sure to do as I go and grab these different images is I'm dyeing all of them to be the same dark brown color that I've been using in the logos. And that's very typical of what the Country Crock containers really look like. They were light brown with the same dark brown print all over. So now that I'm satisfied with the general look of the label, there's really nothing left to do except to group and copy it a bunch of times. I'm going to make more copies than I really need, so more than the number of containers I have. And when I'm copying over the lids, I'm also going to do some inside a circle and some just plain so that maybe I could even take a circle punch and cut those out that way. Here's what the whole sheet looks like printed out. Here they are all cut out. And now I'm just going to glue them on using my 3-in-1 beacon glue. Gluing the labels onto these little lids is pretty self-explanatory. They fit right in that little circular indent. But when it comes to gluing on the labels on the containers, I found it was really useful to roll it up a little bit first so that it's already kind of trained to go the direction that I want it to go. And what that does is that then when I'm putting my glue on the outside of the container, I can pretty easily smooth down this label without getting a ton of glue on the front of the label or on the edges. And voila, now I have a whole set of completely matching Appalachian Tupperware. And as you can see, my daughter's hand painted Tupperware turned out really cool too. So now it's time to fill these up. I'm using an older issue of Southern Living to help illustrate to my children what you might find in a country crock container when I was a young girl. First up, everybody's favorite. Whenever you open up a country crock, you are really hoping that it's going to be pimento cheese. Here is Rosalind Carter's personal recipe, and I'm just going to eyeball it, cut out a little bit in a circle, and slide that on in. I could glue it, But I really like that these little containers can open and close so that we can take things out and refill them as we like to. So this is where my youngest kiddo jumped in and was like, "Well, if we are filling up the dollhouse fridge, we have got to have some carrots." So we colored the tips of some toothpicks orange, and we can fill up another little Tupperware with those. And now I've gone back to my magazine and I've cut out a little bit of butter because it just would not be the full refrigerator opening experience if we did not have one decoy Country Crock container that actually holds Country Crock vegetable spread. So here we are. And last but not least, whether it is opening up the Appalachian Tupperware from my childhood or the slightly bougier, made to hold food storage containers from my children's childhood, regardless, when you open up our refrigerator, you are pretty likely to find some noodles. So here I've just got a rubber band and I've snipped it into some little pieces and they look just like some pasta. So while we're stocking our dollhouse fridge, I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for watching and joining us on Honey, I Shrunk the Kitch. If you enjoy these kinds of miniature trash to treasure projects, I hope that you'll click subscribe and join us for more. Thanks so much for watching.